Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. In this video I'd like to go over all the mechanics within phase 1 of the Zariel's challenge. The only real difference in the normal mode of Zariel compared to the Master is that the mechanics are a whole lot more forgiving due to the fact that you will see a lot more of telegraphs, like red telegraphs, and you'll have much more time to essentially respond to certain mechanics to get them right and essentially avoid the damage so you don't die. In the Master version, it's a whole lot more complex, as things will occur much more quickly, it will seem so at least, and you will have to figure out the timing and also the key triggers for when and what things will occur. So let's go on first to begin with the mechanics that you initially see at the very beginning. I'm going to go through in kind of the order at which you experience these mechanics. However, if there's one type of mechanic which you see different versions of within the phase 1, I will go through all of its variants before progressing on to the next part. Anyway, now the first thing you'll notice Zariel will do, she will start hitting the aggravator, the person who has her aggro or attention, with her Blade of Light. This is her basic at-will attack power, and she will use it all the time in between her different other powers. Anyway, then she will initially go on to do a Weight of Virtue, also known as white noise. And she will essentially do this every time after she announces either "prove you're worthy to me," or "only the worthy will triumph," or "you believe you are worthy," and then she'll hold up her sword and she'll release the Weight of Virtue, and this will do a significant amount of damage to everybody no matter where you are situated on the platform. So you ideally want to make sure you're full HP and you have the coordinated buffs and debuffs on the boss so that she basically deals less damage for that. Then we go on to see the Sword Fall, these large red AoEs that will spawn on your character, and you want to spread these out and not overlap them on top of each other. Basically, they will do a decent amount of damage, and if you have them overlapped, they will do twice as much damage. Thus, in the Master mode, you will die if you have it overlapped, and in the Easy mode, it doesn't really matter since the damage values on those are really small. Anyway, then we will go ahead to see the first Judgment, this being also known as the Tank Buster. Now, this Judgment, if not done correctly, somebody will die. Now, initially she will stun the aggravator, the person who has her aggro, and everybody in a small radius around that person. So you want that aggravator, the tank, to be in front of the boss and not have anybody near him or her. This stun duration will last about 6 to 7 seconds, and then she'll leap into the air and she'll strike the aggravator. Now, this aggravator can change. If the stunned target is still the aggravator and she hits that person, she will automatically kill that person. There's no way you can fully tank it or avoid it, and therefore you need to switch the aggro from the aggravator, which is stunned, to another person. So that's why you would run 2 tanks within this trial, and you cannot solo tank. On to our next mechanic. We have Celestial Blades. These will essentially be those portals that will spawn on the outside of the arena. Now, these portals in the Master mode, they will just initially spawn and then they will show a red AoE for 1 second and then fire. In the normal mode of Zariel, they will spawn, show their red AoE, and then after about 5 seconds, then they will fire. So in the Master mode, you need to react a whole lot quicker and kind of have that spatial awareness to be able to move accordingly for those portals, since you should know where they're going to strike. Anyway, you have multiple different types of those portals which they will spawn in. One type will be they will spawn in a 90-degree arc on one side of the platform, and they will all point towards the center, and they will essentially fire, and they will fire across the platform, making a red AoE on one side in a 90-degree arc and also on the opposite side. So you just want to be in those arcs on either side. Then we have portals that will spawn parallel to each other. So you'll get a line of portals with lots of space in between each of them, and then they will fire across the platform in a parallel fashion, and you need to find your safe spot, so you'll have to be able to move yourself in between. Now these will always spawn in the exact same coordination, so you can find your spot orientated by the face on the platform. You can see these spurs, and a little bit to the left of each, or clockwise of each, you can stand there, and that will always be a safe spot. There are also multiple other safe spots further out than the initial ring, and you can go ahead and find them for yourselves. But that's essentially how I do it. And on top of these portals being parallel, you will also get it to become like a grid fashion. So instead of just being parallel, you'll have another row on 90 to that, and that will create a grid. And this is where it's more important to know where your safe spot is for those portals. Now for the easy mode of Zariel, it won't matter so much, since those red lines will spawn 5 seconds before they actually fire, so you'll have plenty of time to move accordingly. In the hard mode of Zariel, you will get a debuff, a negative condition, where essentially you'll take damage over time. If you have a low amount of HP, this could kill you if your healer's not paying attention to you. Ideally, you don't get hit by these portals, and therefore you won't take that damage over time. This is also nothing to worry about in the easy mode of Zariel. Now we go on to Rain of Swords mechanic, these being also known as the clusters. Now generally they do not target the tanks, but they'll target your healers and your DPS. Now when they initially spawn, you'll see a long line, kind of a dashed line, connecting you to a cluster of portals on the side of the arena. Now you need to direct this line away from the party, since when the timer is up, about 5 seconds, these portals will fire and they'll shoot a rain of swords across the platform in like a wide line. So it's vital you face this away from the party so you don't unnecessarily damage them. And there will be 2 of these sets of clusters, and you do not want to overlap them or find yourself within the overlap. This is a very vital mechanic within the master version of Zariel, as this can tend to kill people fairly easily, as these Rain of Swords deal a significant amount of damage. Moving on, we go to Scathing Light, also known as Hypo, where one person will have 4 horizontal arrows pointing inward to them and 1 vertical arrow pointing down to them, and then it will have a small ring around. Now when this spawns, you initially all want to group up in this small ring around that target and tank the damage together. The more targets within that area, the less damage everybody takes, and vice versa. So you want to make sure you have enough people grouped together for that. Anyway, then we go on to our Parhelion. Now I'm not going to go and pronounce that ever again, I'm going to call it Holy Donut. Now this Holy Donut will essentially start off with a ring of these radiant orbs will start circling around Zariel, and they'll spin up really quickly to create essentially a speeding ring of light around her. Now after a few seconds they will expand away from her, and you'll have a giant ring of those orbs, and then they will all explode, dealing a significant amount of damage in an area around her. If you are close to her, you're safe, and if you're significantly far away from her, you will also be safe. In the easy mode of Zariel, you'll have plenty of time, and also there will be a red telegraph on the ground, so you'll be able to easily move accordingly. Moving on to the next similar mechanic, you have Parhelion, I believe. It's also known as Holy Circle, where essentially those orbs, they won't be spinning around her. They will be all in a cluster around her, and they will rise up. Once they rise up all the way, they will explode, dealing damage all around her. So when you see this, you need to move away from her. If either of these mechanics, the Holy Donut or the Holy Circle, hit you, you will receive a vulnerability up condition, and this will essentially make all mechanics deal significantly more damage to you. In the master version, this is vital you don't receive those, so make sure you move accordingly. In the easy mode, it doesn't particularly matter unless you stack up a whole lot of those vulnerabilities. Moving on, we have Hollowed Slash, or a Cleave, where essentially she will do in a 180-degree arc in front of her, facing the aggravator, the tank, the person who's aggro, and it will essentially, in that arc, you'll have a slices or gaps where it will be safe and others not. Now, ideally, everybody's behind the boss, excluding the tank, and it just hit out that way. In the easy mode and the hard mode, it's basically the same. It'll just do less damage in the easy mode. The next important mechanic we have is Spreading Light, also known as Daunting Light. It looks very similar to the Daunting encounter power that you get on the Cleric. Anyway, initially these Dauntings will be in a large cluster together. The first time you see these Dauntings, they will be in a cluster of 4. You will have 4 of them, and they will have arrows pointing outwards. They will initially burst in the middle, and then they will pulse out, and they'll pulse again, and they'll do so all the way to the edge of the platform. And essentially you just need to move accordingly so that you don't get hit by these, either by letting them burst in one spot, then you move into the spot where they did burst initially, and then you'll be fine there, and you just let them pulse outwards, or you just move in the arc of which they won't essentially hit you by calculating their trajectories and moving accordingly. Now, on top of this, you will also see these Dauntings in clusters of 8s, where you will get 8 of them, and then they will initially pulse, and they'll move outwards. Again, the easiest way is to just stand next to it, let it initially burst, and jump to where it had burst before, and let them pulse out all the way to the edge of the platform. Otherwise, you can just move in between the arcs. Now, at one period in phase 1, you will see these Dauntings will cluster in a group of 4, either side of the platform. At this point, you want to just stay in the middle. Everybody groups up in that middle circle, fairly easy to see there in the platform, and you stay there and you let those Dauntings essentially burst across the platform. If any of these Dauntings, any of them, if it's a stack of 4 or a stack of 8, hit you, then you will also receive that vulnerability up debuff, basically increasing all the damage you take from then on for a period of seconds. I believe it's 45 seconds. Then you will go on to see a mechanic called either the lunge or the wing flap, also known as the Great Divide or Tempest Wings. Now, the Great Divide will be where she teleports to the outside of the platform and she'll appear in the sky on the edge of the platform, and then if she's doing Great Divide or lunge, you will see she will be surrounded in a large circlet of glowing gold light, and there will be also some shafts of light emitting from her in all directions, and she'll essentially charge up this lunge and then she'll shoot across the platform. The way to avoid this is to move to the furthest points away, so that will be perpendicular from the line that she will take across the platform on that edge of the platform. So essentially you just move to the sides and you split apart. Then with the Tempest Wings, simply you just need to move close to her. See what these Tempest Wings are, or the wing flap. Essentially she will just have both her wings high up in the sky, and she'll be surrounded in a blue light with an outer ring of, again, gold. So with that mechanic, you just need to move up close to her. If you don't get close enough to her, she'll just push you off the platform and you'll be dead. So that's pretty much all the mechanics you see within phase 1. However, some of the mechanics will be combined with each other. For example, you might get Scathing Light, and then you'll get the parallel portals. On top of this, you'll get your sword falls and also your daunting lights. Now, I do plan to make similar videos of the other phases within Zariel's challenge at a later date. They are currently a work in progress. So, hopefully this is helpful to you guys who wish to start out and are learning the Zariel's challenge. If you're learning the easy mode, it should be a whole lot easier to do so, However, I still highly recommend to get an overview of the mechanics, and this video should help you with that. Anyway, if I've presented this well, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye for now.